I'm John Hanna for CDTV.net, and we have Marian Carlson joining us from Orlando, Florida. Thanks for joining us, Marian.
Thank you so much for having me, John. It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, tell us a little bit about the your background.
Well, I'm a web designer. I have, before I started in business, I was a web designer for the U.S. Army, and I've been in business now, working with small business owners for the most part, for about 4 years. And I've discovered that it's a wonderful business to be in. I love it, but it's every day changing and every day a new challenge. One of the reasons I actually love it is because it's every day a new challenge. But that's what I do.
There you go. It keeps you up on your toes, as they say, right?
And constantly in continuing education.
There you go. It's always something new with web programming, especially so many new designations out there, so many new applications to make sure to make the programming easier. But then again, you gotta relearn something after 6 months. You gotta do that. It's kind of like a constant change.
It certainly is, and but it's something that I absolutely love, and I wouldn't be doing anything else ever. I just can't imagine wanting to do something else.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's awesome.
So, the your book, Websites for Small Business. Tell us about that.
Well, as I said before, I was a web designer for the Army, and when we moved to Florida, I said, you know what, I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to do websites, just, freelance website design. The business has grown way beyond that. But what I discovered when I went into business for myself and when I was going to work for businesses, I was working for the Army before, and that's a very different customer. But when I went into work for small businesses, I discovered a really unsettling truth. And that truth is this: if you are a small business owner and you have a website, you have a horror story to tell. That is almost universally true. And it seems that just about every small business owner, I talk to people all day, every day, and every one of them has a tale of horror to tell about how they got their website, or how they didn't get the website that they paid for, or, just overpromised and underdelivered, ripped off and left in the lurch. And and honestly, I'm just appalled by the lack of ethics in the industry in general. So I had to write this book. Somebody had to write this book to kind of level the playing field. The problem is that small business owners don't know anything about web design, and so they don't know what questions to ask. And it's like when I take my car to a mechanic, okay? I'm a middle-aged woman, and I walk in there, they see me coming. You know, they see, they charge me for stuff I don't need because I don't know anything about cars, and they know it. They, like I say, they charge me for stuff I don't need. They overcharge me for the stuff I do need. And then I have to take their word for it, whether it was worth it or whether they even did anything. So the opportunity to get ripped off is right there prevalent. And it's the same in the web design world, except it's more so, because unlike an auto mechanic, a web designer does not have to be licensed by the state. It doesn't have to have any kind of certifications. People don't know that they should distrust web designers, and web designers don't have a brick and mortar building. I can't tell you how many people that I've talked to have paid a web designer X number of dollars to do their website, and then the guy just walked away, took their money, cashed their check, and walked away. And there's really very little without a good contract between the two. And who knew you needed a contract, kind of thing, right?
Right, right.
So
Well,
that's why I wrote the
well,
book.
officially, if there's a business um, exchange, or somebody's buying or selling something, there should be a contract with regards to especially big ticket items.
Right. And there should be. but people don't recognize the need.
Because there's a small business?
They're small business. And the guy says, hey, I can do your website for $800. And they say, whoo, $800 is a lot of money for a small business owner. And he says, okay, all right, well, here's what I want. And the guy says, okay. And then he does something or he doesn't. And usually he'll say, I need half up front and half when it's done. And so you write a check for $400 and then he goes to work. And sometimes it works out nicely and you pay your $800 and you get what you thought you were paying for. But very, very often the web designer finishes what he thinks, finishes a website that includes 5 pages of content and you get it and you're like, it's horrible. It's not what I had in mind. It doesn't include the contact forms I thought would be on there. It doesn't include, pictures of my products that I thought would be on there. It doesn't include the ability for me to take credit card transactions. And he's like, well, you didn't say you needed that. Well, I thought I said I needed that. Well, I don't remember you saying you need. You see how that can go back and forth.
Right. That's why you need to have the contract.
Absolutely. But people do not. They don't know what questions to ask, and it's a whole lot more than just what's going to be there. The problem with requesting a contract is that you don't know for example, let me give an example. If every website has to have a domain name, the www.whatever.com, that's your domain name, and every website has to have one. And if a small business owner goes online and he purchases the domain name and he goes online himself and he types in his contact information and his credit card information and he purchases that domain name, then he owns that domain name. But if he paid someone else to do that for him, chances are really good that the person he paid to do that for him owns the domain name. Which means that, if that guy wants to, he can restrict your access to it. He can keep any other web designer from ever touching it. He can put it up or take it down at his leisure. And people don't realize that that's an important, they assume that they own it. And many of my clients have been through this where, they thought they owned it. They've been paying to have it renewed every year, but they've been paying the designer. And then for whatever reason, whether the designer goes out of business or he gets too expensive or for whatever reason, the customer decides that they want to take it to a different web designer. And that's when they discover that the original web designer owns the domain. And you're pretty much just out of luck. So the www.mycompany.com that's been your domain all along, you now realize that you're stuck with the guy who owns it, or you've got to go change your domain name.
Right.
That's just one example, and that happens all the time.
Yeah, I've known people who are mad and they said, well, somebody owns the domain name. I would let them know that somebody owns the domain name. I was like, wait, I thought this is your domain name. And according to this one, it's somebody else's name on it. I said, no, that's my domain. I was like, wait. First thing you need to do, while you're still in good standing with your website developer, is that you need to take it back, to take it for your own. That's your company name.
That's absolutely right. And that whole piece about while you're still in good standing,
right.
Oh my goodness. Because once the honeymoon is over,
right.
is the wrong time to ask.
Right.
Because if things get ugly between a designer and a businessman, that designer owns that domain. He can do anything he wants to with that domain. He can turn it into any kind of website he wants it to be.
Right.
So imagine, just use your imagination, okay?
Especially if it's been around for a couple of years already. So the first thing the small business owner needs to do is to make sure that the domain name is registered under their name as opposed to the web developer or the web page designer.
Absolutely. And make sure they have access to the accounts. If you cannot go in and change your password on your domain name, you don't have the kind of access you need to have as an owner.
There you go. All right, so we're gonna. This is part 1. Where can people find you?
I'm at MarianneCarlson.com. That's MarianneCarlson.com. ANNE, Carlson, CARLSON.com.
All right, so that concludes the part one of the two-part interview with Marian, and I'm John Hana for CDTV.net.